Hello everybody, welcome to StraightA. Dawson here, back in another video, and here today we're going to be covering the AFC and NFC South free agency grades. As you kind of see, normally I've been doing this series, if you've followed the other two videos, I've been doing this series with Ben and Trayton. Right now our schedules are not matching very well, and the draft is right around the corner, and I want to get these grades out before the draft. So unfortunately I just kind of said, hey, you know what, I'm going to do these myself, and kind of just talk about each of the teams that are going to be in each of the conferences or each of the different cardinal directions, and we'll go and finish this up, and then hopefully we'll have one big video where all of us kind of talk about the mock draft here pretty soon, and then we plan on live streaming the draft, so that's going to be something we're going to be looking forward to in the coming days. But before we get started, guys, please leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and comment any suggestions going forward for us. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. So on the bright side of doing these free agency videos alone, I can kind of just talk about my thoughts and just kind of go free range here, give my initial grade, and I'll just be giving one grade. The other guys didn't give any grades or anything, so we'll just do this very nonchalant. And eventually, maybe as a final video, I'll kind of rank them and kind of talk about the overarching going into next season. It's kind of some initial thoughts kind of video, which will actually be kind of cool to do if I decide to do that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and go in the AFC South. And I believe I'm going to start with another a team that's going to be probably one of the best free agency teams in the league so far. So as you'll see, I'm going to swap back and forth between, not that one. What actually is this? Oh, this is the kind of chart for impacts for each of the teams. Either way, here's kind of the team. Here's what the Texans have gained, and here's what the Texans have lost. And we're going to kind of just go through some significant names here for the Texans. And here, I'll kind of even go out a little bit more to kind of get a full range of it all. First of all, acquiring Joe Mixon, I think, is a pretty good thing for the Texans. I think their run game has been one of the things that's been not necessarily holding them back, but just something that's needed to improve. And especially for CJ Stroud to have more supporting cast, I think is going to be really, really good for them in the long run. And even though Joe Mixon isn't the best, they didn't have to give up a whole lot for him. He's young, he's talented, and he's at least going to get you probably that 1,000-yard mark. And I think it's what they need. And that, reliable receiving back too. I think Joe Mixon is very underrated pickup here. People kind of crap on him for not being the best, but I mean he's what the Texans need right now, and I think it's a great pickup. Stephon Diggs, say what you will about him in terms of his personality, he is the #1 receiver, like one of the #1 receivers in the league, I should say, and he's going to be a very, very valuable asset to the Texans. And I think at least for the first couple of years, he's going to have the excitement about being a part of another team. Even if he isn't the happiest for at least the first year, I feel like he's going to just have that adrenaline if he's with another team that's really, really good, really talented. So I think it's not going to be that big of a deal. I think in the long run, it's going to work out for the Texans a lot better. Again, practically for nothing, they gave away second round, and they got a 5th and 6th back in return. Like, that's kind of insane, isn't it? I love how the second round pick was Minnesota's, by the way. It's a nice little full round moment. But Noah Brown also good re-signing there. Dalton Schultz, great re-signing. A lot of great re-signings as you see here. Autry, I think is a great D-line pickup. Of course, Daniel Hunter, great signing for the Texans. I mean, they just made such good moves. I like CJ Henderson's move. Jeff Okudah, I think he's just underrated, more of a depth back. Fairburn, I think he's just a reliable kicker. I think they just made a lot of great smart moves and really didn't lose anybody. Grenard, probably the most significant by far, but like everybody else, I just don't see as that significant of a loss. And if they did lose them, they either can easily replace them in the draft, or they replace them already in free agency. So, or they already had good depth in the first place. So I'm giving the Texans, I think, my second A. I think the Eagles received my first A. The Texans, 100% for the AFC, are one of the best teams in free agency this year. They did everything they needed to and just got significantly better for it. Now they still have the draft coming up, and they still have the rest of free agency, any more re-signings and all that. And they still have a decent cap room. They're not in the cap hell or anything. So I think the Texans put themselves in a very, very good situation to succeed. So call me crazy, but Texans get A for me. Got to go into the Colts. This is kind of one of the teams that I'm actually very curious about, because I've seen their moves, and I also seen that they didn't lose anybody. Zach Moss is probably the most significant name to me they lost, but like Jake Martin, I don't even know who that was. Gardner Minshew, of course, was pretty much a band-aid backup, I should say. Well, Isaiah McKenzie's just fine. But I mean, you can't really say much about this. I mean, Michael Pittman re-signed with the Colts here. The DeForest Buckner, of course, re-signed, I should say, even though they signed whole new deals. They didn't really pick up many significant names, but like Grover Stewart is a good re-signing as well. Trey Sermon's a great pickup, I think, and then Joe Flacco is a great backup, just got what's called Gardner Minshew was. So they really didn't lose anybody. There's not a whole lot to talk about here, but they just re-signed everybody they needed and gained, pretty much a couple fine pieces. So they really just are the definition of a team who just didn't make any moves but kept the whole team intact and didn't lose anything. So this is going to be kind of a weird grading, because C is usually where you don't feel like they improved. And granted, yeah, I don't think the Colts improved, but they definitely didn't get any worse. Because they didn't lose anybody, really. I guess like Trey Sermon's technically probably a downgrade from Zach Moss, I guess, if you want to get really nitpicky here. But like, these re-signings are really key, and I grade re-signings very heavily here. They could have very easily lost DeForest Buckner, Michael Pittman, Grover Stewart. You know, they could have easily lost some of these guys, but they kept the whole team together. And so I'm going to go as a B- here. I think that the re-signings carry a lot of weight to me, and so I'm not going to just necessarily reward them for just sticking around, not doing anything. But they didn't get worse, and if anything, I think keeping your team together is also significantly important. And I think a B- is kind of appropriate, just because you picked up a couple different people, you re-signed all the important pieces, and now you still got the draft. So I think the Colts are walking in with dealer's money right now and gonna play with it, basically. So I like the Colts here. Again, nobody lost here pretty much, and I like the Colts going into the season. They could be the AFC South's gonna get really interesting really quick with a lot of these pickups. We have the Jaguars next, and they're a weird team. I think initially I'm gonna give them a D+ in terms of my my rankings here, but let's just talk about some of their pickups first. Mac Jones. Sure, he's in Jacksonville, fine. I mean, I think he's a fine quarterback to be a backup. I think he's not going to be that big of a deal. Gabe Davis, I think, is underrated. I think he wasn't utilized a whole lot in Buffalo just because there's so much depth there, and that his role was just so sporadic. But I think in Jacksonville, I think he's a downgrade from Ridley, but he's also not the most expensive receiver in the world. So I'm not totally up against that. Devin Duvernay is, I think, a pretty good pickup. Blake Hentz is a good extension. Mitch Morse, great signing for the center. Josh Allen, great re-signing for Jacksonville. I did not think they would get that done as well as they did. They did. Eric Armstead, amazing pickup. One of the best pickups, probably all free agency. And so, like, you can't really, go against this. Darnell Savage, underrated pick, I think, for them 3-year deal for Jacksonville. So just nice little quality pickups here. Now, granted, they lost Calvin Ridley, Agnew. Trying to look and see if there's anybody else. Actually, the more I look at this, I thought they lost more people. I thought there was more Josh Allens of the world. But now that I'm seeing, I thought their depth was gone. But Ridley, I don't think that carries that much weight. I thought there was more people outside of Ridley. But looking at this, they lost a lot of depth and they lost a couple decent players. Again, I think I like Agnew. But otherwise, I'm not really too sad about this. Brandon McManus, sure, I have a heart for him, but he's not that big of a loss. So Jacksonville, actually, initially I thought going into this was going to be D+, just because I had the instinct of my mind, like they got worse, because I've been hearing Treithen, Taylor, and all them talk about Titans doing so well, and that Jacksonville is like one of the worst teams in the signings of the free agency in our chats. But I don't see anything that really great against them. In fact, I think I'm gonna give them a B+. Honestly, I kind of almost give them an A. I think I'm gonna give Jacksonville an A, because again, they didn't lose anybody. I'm looking over here, I'm like, you had to place Ridley, and sure, you got Gabe Davis, so maybe that's a B+ type there. But like, again, I think Ridley was not necessarily washed, but I don't think he's worth the money. They already have, I think they have fine receivers. Sure, they don't have a number 1, but was Ridley a number 1? I mean, if you want to argue, yes, sure, but they have a bunch of number 2s, and I think having a bunch of number 2s is almost just as valuable sometimes. If you have 3 number 2s versus 1 number 1 and a bunch of 3s, what's better? I'm not too sure in that case, and I like like Evan Ingram at tight end, so it's going to be really, really valuable for them. They re-signed Josh Allen, great move. I love Mitch Morse. Mitch Morse is probably one of the better centers in the league. Eric Armstead, amazing signing right here. Darnell Savage, very underrated. Gabe Davis, I think, underrated. Mac Jones, not a bad pickup. Ezra Cleveland, it's one I didn't even note of. That's a pretty dang good pickup too. Is this an A? I feel like this is an A. Like, they didn't lose anything and they gained a bunch, and they re-signed all the people they needed to, I think. If you really liked, okay, here's what I'll say about this. If you really like Ridley, sure, I'll concede a B to you. I'll give you a B+. But like, I don't see this being very bad. I think I'm giving Jacksonville an A at free agency here. I just don't see any reason not to. I mean, they signed very big pickups. I mean, between 3 good pickups, again, Darnell Savage, Mitch Morse, and you can throw Ezra Cleveland if you want in there. Devin Duvernay, I think, is a good pickup too. And re-signing Josh Allen, maybe it's a B+. Maybe I should tone it down a little bit. Eric Armstead probably is the only significant big pickup, but Mitch Morse I like. So I'm kind of ranging that 2 different deals. I'll give him a B+. I think that'll be my final grade for him. Just because it's that, it's like when you're in school and university or whatever, and you're like at 90 or 89. it's kind of the edge of that. So I'll give them the 89 and go with a B+, just because I guess they aren't the most significant pickups. A lot of re-signings. So do you reward re-signings? Then again, Eric Armstead, really big fucking. You know what? No, fuck it. No, I'm giving the bump up. I'm giving the 90. I'm giving the A. I think it's just I can't deny that Eric Armstead signing being so good, and they re-signed everybody they needed to. Again, Ridley. Again, if you like him, sure, I'll give you the B+ a little bit easier. But like, you can't tell me anybody else here was like a very significant loss for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I'm gonna go A. This is a very big surprise to me. I'm giving out A's a lot more now without Ben or Trayton here. Then we got the Titans, and this is a weird one. And I'm gonna probably give a little bit of credit to Ben and Trayton and all them, because they've really convinced me that the Titans are a little bit better this year in free agency than I thought. All right, I'll give them a little bit of credit. I have a prediction going into this next season that the Tennessee Titans are not going to do better than 5 or 6 wins. So that's just my thought with the Tennessee Titans. I think there's a lot of delusional fans there, and I still kind of believe that. I think 6 wins a lot easier now. I think that's kind of belief I'm at, is that they're going to be 6-11, maybe, if God forbid, 7-10. But like 6-11 is kind of my ceiling for them. But kind of looking at this, Tony Pollard, if you tell me Tony Pollard's even close to a Band-Aid over the Derrick Henry bullet wound, then I'm sorry. I'm sure Tony Pollard's younger, but like he's not that talented. I just don't see what people see in him. He gets a lot of volume, and behind one of the worst O-lines in the league, I don't know what to say. Nick Westbrook is a good re-signing. Kenneth Murray's a decent signing. L'Jarius Sneed is a great signing. Again, one of the better signings in the whole thing. Awuzie, pretty good signing. So they made their secondary a lot better, which is rare for a lot of these teams. And Tennessee definitely needed to have that done. So I'll give you that. Cushenberry, good there too for them. So like, there's a couple good pickups here that are making me lean B+. But then you look over here, I'm like, okay, who'd they lose? And you know, I know Derrick Henry, but like they didn't lose many other people. That's kind of where I kind of came to. Kind of similar to Jacksonville just now. That's kind of why I've been leaning closer to Titans being like B+. I'm not going to give them the A. I think I'll give them B+. I'll concede that battle. Where I think they signed enough talent, or B-. I don't know. I'll kind of look at who they signed again. But like, Derrick Henry is the most significant by far, and he was getting older. I'll give him that. But like a lot of these other people, Danico Autry, I guess, Travis Gibson, kind of bad losses. But honestly, losing these players and making your team especially better in the secondary, such a big upside for me. So L'Jarius Sneed was a great pickup. Louis Cushenberry, do I give him B-? I think I'm going to give him B-, just because they didn't sign many people in terms of like that pristine people. So that kind of brings it down to a B+. And I think Derrick Henry was a big loss, plus with all the depth they lost. I'm going to give him the B-, is what my heart's going to tell me. But honestly, don't be surprised here that the Tennessee Titans made some pretty good pickups that are going to be worth it in the long run. I think Tennessee, in the long run, could be a really good team in this division. I just don't think in the short run, with their quarterback situation the way it is, their receivers. Again, I'm not a big Ridley believer. I guess that's somebody I probably should have brought up more, was Ridley. I just don't know how well he's going to do on this team. If he does amazing, then I'll shoot myself in the foot and say, all right, maybe that's credit. If you want to give him a B+ because of Ridley, sure. I'm not a big fan of him. Just because we have not seen the production from him. We haven't seen what he was originally doing. Sure, you can say it was a rust year, but like, how many rust years are we going to really give to people nowadays? I just think that's kind of a slippery slope to get down on. So I'm going to give him B-, but that's a pretty strong B-. So be glad about that. Trayton, Ben, everybody watching this is rewatching this saying, okay, what they get the Tennessee Titans? So there you go. So now we'll move on to the NFC South, and that will also be kind of interesting to see how those kind of adapted. With the NFC South, we're going to be starting off with potentially the next A in my free agency signings, just because Kirk Cousins carries a lot of weight there for Atlanta, who really desperately needed some sort of reliable QB, and there's no more reliable of a QB than Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins has been awesome last couple of years, and honestly, throughout his whole career, has been doing pretty well. Is he getting paid probably too much money? Sure. I think the QB market's so inflated right now that I don't think he deserves the money, but you can't deny that the Falcons were literally probably just only missing a quarterback, and they got their quarterback, and now they're just playing with house money. Darnell Mooney, I think, is a fine pickup. I think people forget how good Darnell Mooney, or how consistent Darnell Mooney was until last year. So I think that's fine. Rondale Moore, again, underrated pick, just more of a good, reliable kind of third type of receiver with Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts there. I just think that they're getting a lot more depth with people who have done consistently well. Not to say these are going to be game-breaking people, but like, They didn't need to get game-breaking people. They already had the team there. Then you got, you know, what's another good pickup here? Actually, not too many other big pickups, especially on defense. I'm very disappointed with their defense signings. Now, granted, the defense is probably already one of the best in the league, so I can't really complain about that. Especially if they still have a lot of draft capital to get people in the draft. But let's see exactly who they lost. You know, again, Van Jefferson and Rondell Moore basically canceled each other out. Cordell Patterson, depending on how you look at the new kick return rules, should kind of as a decent loss. Jonnu Smith, I think is just a good tight end, but like again, they weren't exactly using him, or they were using him too much, I would say, is kind of the exact problem. Calais Campbell, again, he got too old. He's getting too old. Trey Flowers, Jeff Okudah, I think we're fine to get rid of. I think it does make their DBs a little bit worse, but I think they're also in positions to get better DBs. So I'm not like totally mad at this. So it's like they didn't gain a whole lot, but they didn't lose a whole lot. And you can kind of say Kirk Cousins, I think almost gives them that B+. I think I'm going to give them that B+ just because their team was already so good that they were only missing the quarterback, and they got their quarterback. You could argue a B- just because the depth of people aren't there, and I don't think they really replaced much of anything, but I'm going to give them the B+ just because they were smart with it all. They didn't make any big splashy signings, and they just got Kirk Cousins basically as their big signing, quote-unquote. And I like Darnell Mooney and Rondell Moore enough where I think I can kind of get that B+ a little bit stronger there. I don't think I can give them the A just because if you only make one big, great signing, it doesn't really change the team. Now, granted, quarterback does change the team, but it's also too much money, I think. In the long run, it may not help them. But I think this will be a very interesting season for the Falcons, and I don't think they'll do as well as people are predicting. But because I don't think they're going to win the division as of right now. But I do like them, so I'm going to give them the B+. I think it's a fair grade for the big pickup with Kirk Cousins there. Then we move on to the Panthers, and they lost DJ Chark, which was their number one receiver. You know, granted, then they pick up somebody else afterwards. We'll find out here in a second. But so they really didn't do a whole lot. They lost Jeremy Chin, Shaquille Griffin. They lost Brian Burns. They traded away. I mean, they are in full on they're full on rebuild. Hayden Hurst, say what you will, I like him. But like, sure, okay, yeah, that's right. They picked up Deontay Johnson, who's probably the equivalent of DJ Chark, I guess. Sure, we'll go with that. Otherwise, though, I mean, they just picked up depth issues. I mean, you hope that a couple of these people work out in your favor here. But, like, otherwise, I'm not too big of a fan of anything they did here. I mean, they didn't pick up anybody great. Jadeveon Clowney, I guess, is fine. But, like, they probably got worse from everything I've seen, especially Shaquille Griffin, Brian Burns, Deshaun Williams, I think, C.J. Henderson, Von Bell, Jeremy Chin. I mean, I just think this all adds up to probably worse pickups than what they did. I mean, because, man, the Panthers are in full rebuild, and they're just trying to put together something. They got to figure out whether Bryce Young's the guy, so they need to really focus on their offensive tackles, which, granted, you know, Nijman, I think is how you say it, and Robert Hunt, I think are pretty valuable additions. It does look like they actually made some big signings here on the O-line, so I guess I can't really clown on them too much for that. So maybe just a C. Is this just a C? That's how I'm just kind of feeling. I don't feel moved by this. Granted, I don't think they lost the biggest of people, too. They probably got worse on defense, but they added to the offensive line, which was much needed. Their wide receivers really didn't change. So it's kind of like they got worse at defense by decent margin, I think, but they also got better offensive line by decent margin. So I'll give them a C. I'll just give the Panthers a C. You know, I think, especially, Brian Burns is gone. Granted, I like Brian Burns. I really do. So that's why I'm kind of like, oh, is that D+ kind of style? Because the secondary got worse. Now that if you take Brian Burns to account, it's there too. And the offensive line they picked up are good, but like, are they that good? Does that cancel out with each other enough? I don't think so. I think that the quality of talent overall does outweigh it a little bit for me. Because again, they didn't lose much on the offense at all. But like, I consider about, you know, Brian Burns down as being pretty decent losses here, like these guys right here. But then again, I think the three offensive linemen, I'm going D+. I'm going D+, just because I think it's significant that we have to kind of punish the Panthers there. But again, I can't give them any big worse because the offensive line pickups, I've realized, I didn't realize to pick up Nijman and Hunt and Lewis. All three of those guys are actually going to add a lot to the offensive line and hopefully finally protect Bryce Young enough to kind of give him some time, and maybe Deontay Johnson and a rookie wide receiver can do well. Now, granted, I guess Panthers don't really have a first-round pick. So I'm going to give them D+, just because I just don't see much great here. Jadeveon Clowney, I guess, is kind of a band-aid over the Brian Burns bullet hole. So I think a strong D+ is pretty fair here for the Panthers. Then we got the Saints, and I actually have no idea right now going into this what they did. I haven't heard anything from them because I know they're in cap hell. I know they think they made one big signing because it was like, oh my gosh, how'd they afford that signing? But I mean, looking at this, I mean, they got Nathan Peterman, A. It's all A. Teron Matthew re-signed with them. Willie Gay Jr. is a decent pickup, I guess. Demario Davis is re-signed. It's cool. Oh, Chase Young, that was the big pickup, which you can argue either way with that one. He's fine. He's good. But I think they got good value for what they got there. They lost Michael Thomas. Didn't realize he's a free agent. That's kind of interesting. Jimmy Graham. I mean, all these guys would kind of need to be let go. So, I mean, B-. I mean, I think this Chase Young is good value pickup. $13 million deal for a 1-year contract, and they're giving Chase Young a chance. Is that worth a B-? Tyrann Mathieu. I mean, they got key pickups here. Well, they didn't really lose anybody. So, I mean, Jameis Winston. I mean, but what are you gonna say about that? Michael Thomas, you can argue that, but I think this B-. I think they didn't lose anybody. They re-signed who they needed to, and they moved forward. I think okay. This is just fine. This is solid. That's kind of the kind of deal I'm kind of going here. Considering how bad their cap is, not too bad. I guess if you're considering the cap a lot more, probably significantly worse, just because I think cap room is such bullshit that it's not being as enforced as it is, or at least as punished as it is. So we'll go B-. Not too impressed, but I think the re-signings are important to me. Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Bucks, man. This is going to be a very interesting one to analyze because I know there's a lot of different re-signings for them, but they honestly didn't lose anybody either. Devin White and Shaq Barrett and Ryan Jensen. Oh, those are actually 3 very significant losses for me because I like Shaq Barrett, like Devin White, and I like Ryan Jensen. All going away. It's going to kind of hurt the more veteran side of the Bucks here. But let's see who they all picked up too. Of course, Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans resigning have been the biggest notes for me. But who else did they kind of get? Randy Gregory. I like Randy Gregory. That's actually a really cool pickup right there. Chase Edmonds re-signing. That's also good to see. I didn't realize his contract was coming up. Bryce Hall. I'll get a little bit more of an underrated player there. Antoine Winfield Jr. also pretty good. Non-exclusive franchise tag. Is this a C? I feel like this has to be a C. I mean, they re-signed 3 people they needed to. Randy Gregory's good, but they also lost a decent bit here. Is this even a D+? Because, like, those 3 really are significant pickups. Well, they also re-picked up 3 other people. Jordan Whitehead, also seeing him here. So let's kind of look at it this way. I think the 3 newest signings, Randy Gregory, Bryce Hall, and Jordan Whitehead, like those, and I mean Chase Edmonds, or I guess he's a re-signing, sorry. Those 3 versus the 3 they lost is like significantly worse. That's like D- territory. But then they re-signed Baker, who did really fucking good. They got Mike Evans and Antoine Winfield Jr. back, and they re-signed a couple decent people. While I don't think the other people they lost is too big of a deal. So like, does that bring him up to a D+? I mean, definitely bring him up to a D+. Does that put him at a C? I think I'm going to give him the C just purely because I like Baker, Antoine Winfield Jr. and Mike Evans enough that's a core of a team, and if you had to lose 3 significant players, that pretty much cancels each. Pretty much, I would say it still leans D+. But then they got a couple decent signings. I'll give them a C. I feel good about the Bucks this next year. I think people count them out. I was one of the people who counted them out last year, but also said, hey, don't underrate them. I may have on paper say they're really. I think on paper they're really good, while a lot of people didn't think they were. So I think the Bucks are a pretty decent team this year. And I think people are counting them out too quick. I think they could still win the division once again with Baker Mayfield at the helm. So I'll go C here, and that'll be the final grades here. On screen, I'll kind of give you the recap of the AFC and the NFC grades right now. I'll probably maybe have already done the AFC grades recap for you, so if not, then here's the NFC grades for me. And I feel pretty confident. The South has been doing really, really good pickups, really good moves here, and I think it's hard to deny what the AFC and NFC South are doing. They finally are becoming very interesting divisions outside of the Panthers. I think they're all decent teams who have a decent shot at winning their division. Maybe the Saints you can also include. So it's really a Bucks versus Falcons battle, I think, in the NFC South. But I mean, the AFC South is a dogfight. I mean, even the Titans, I think, are going to pick up a decent amount of wins in their division. So it's going to be interesting to see how the South shapes up and how these teams kind of evolve. Because these South teams have been known as some of the worst divisions. But maybe in the next couple years, they can all be some of the best divisions. So we'll see. Tell me what you think about my grades in the comments below. And let's stay tuned for next time. See you guys later. StraightA Dawson, out of here.